Chair Milton Keynes, High Authority Executive Committee. Agenda item 1 is apologies. Apologies, please.
Yeah, councillors Christensen, Hall, Lambert and McLean.
Thank you. The minutes. Are you happy that the minutes are a correct record, and would you also be happy that we take the exempt minutes unless there are any questions, so that we could just say them are all okay?
Agreed. Indeed, yes.
Matters arising. Now, in minute 29, Mr. Hemmings was going to give us an update on data.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. If I may, there's 3 points I'd like to pick up on Great Colne. So the first one was at the last meeting of the committee. I was asked around what provision there'd be for electric vehicle charging points on site. I emailed councillors initially saying there'll be at least one. Having now seen the near final planning application, there will be 3 electric vehicle charging points on site for the care home. I also mentioned at the last meeting that I was due to meet Councillor Nolan and her colleague Shanika around the issue of graffiti on site. That meeting has happened. One of the suggestions they came up with was to kind of print some large pictures to go on the worst affected areas of boarding. They provided us with contact details of the company Milton Keynes that has done that for other buildings around there. So we're making contact with the company to get a quote, see what the cost is going to be like for that, and depending on the cost, we'll take it from there. And the last bit is around the planning. So I have now seen the near final version of the planning documents with just some cosmetic changes they need to make to the documents themselves, not to the planning kind of drawings. I'm content with them, and subject to those cosmetic changes being made, they will be submitted to Milton Keynes Council next week.
Did you talk to them about the entrance? I think you mentioned about using a different entrance, which they're going to build, or not build, because they're going to put plants or something like that.
Yeah, so there's some discussion about the old emergency access and egress roads, whether they could be used. They can't be used for kind of domestic vehicles going in and out of the site because of the speed of exit and entry from the highway involved. There will be some discussion about whether they could use them for emergency services coming into the sites. Care home, they do have semi-frequent ambulance visits. That won't be part of the planning application because they can't run the planning application, something they can't control.
I think the issue was more, wasn't it, to do with during the period of construction. But construction vehicles, larger HGVs, deliveries, etc., could be made via the existing emergency access points rather than having to go onto the estate and drive through the estate to access the construction site.
Yes, yeah. Again, that's something they'll be looking at as well, but it won't form part of the planning application.
Would it not be a condition of part of the planning? A condition of planning?
I don't know. As far as I'm aware, it's not kind of explicit in there.
If anyone's likely to object, it would be Thames Valley Police on the basis of being one on the roundabout, isn't it?
I think it's highways, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Because the ingress and egress is within a certain meterage of quite a speedy junction there. And if you're coming out with a lorry,
yeah,
you're going to end up, but it's a matter for the application, isn't it? It's a matter for highways to determine.
Yeah, it's probably, as you say, it's going to run into a similar issue with normal traffic going in and outside.
So it is a planning issue. So your highways people will deal with that then?
It'll be a matter for the application.
There will be. Thank you. So everything is going to plan then?
Yeah, so the deadline was to have the planning application by the end of the month, which they will hear next week.
I think that was the only matter arising. So are there any further declarations of interest? No? Any questions?
None, Chairman.
So the gender pay gap on page 17, and Clay Mansfield, you're going to take us through this.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Gender pay gap report is presented today with the recommendation for the content of the report being noted and approved for the government website, or for submission onto the government website as per the annual reporting requirements by the end of March. As an organisation, the authority has a duty to carry out gender pay gap reporting and to publish 6 pieces of prescribed data about the pay and bonuses of male and female employees on an annual basis by the 30th of March. The snapshot date for public sector employers is the 31st of March each year, and the data presented within the report as detailed in Appendix 1 of your pack is based on data as at 31st of March 2021. The gender pay gap shows a difference between the average earning of males compared to females, irrespective of role or seniority. It examines the difference in the average pay gap expressed as a percentage of male earnings. It's important to note that the gender pay gap is not unlawful, and the presence of a gender pay gap does not mean the authority is discriminating against groups of individuals. The gender pay gap is a reflection of a workforce profile at a specific time, i.e. snapshot date. In comparison, equal pay is a legal obligation and about unequal reward of male and females carrying out the same job, similar job, or work of equal value as set out in the Equality Act 2010. Organisations can have a gender pay gap without breaching equal pay provisions, and the authority's gender pay gap is not as a result of any equal pay issues. This is the 5th year of undertaking gender pay gap reporting, and for 2021, both the mean, which is the average, and the median, which is the midpoint gender pay gap data has decreased, which is really positive. And this now takes the authority's gender pay gap 1.6 percentage points below the UK national average for 2021, which is 15.4%. Both the mean and median gender pay gaps for 2021 are the lowest since first reporting in 2017. For 2021, the mean gender pay gap has decreased by 5 percentage points from that previous year to 13.8%, and the median gender pay gap has decreased by 6.3 percentage points from 2020 to 9%. Gender pay gap report has highlighted that the authority continues to have a gender pay gap. However, figures are not expected to reduce significantly within the short to medium term, as the issues driving gender pay gap requires a longer term commitment. Gender pay gap is generally caused by an underrepresentation of female employees in higher paid or senior roles. In order to lower the gender pay gap, attention must be paid to the recruitment, retention and development of females into these areas, and a range of strategies have been adopted to support this. It is positive to note that in 2021, there's been an increased representation of females in senior roles, with this year seeing the highest representation of females since first reporting in 2017. A number of key areas of activities to lower the gender pay gap have been identified, as detailed in the action plan within the gender pay gap report itself. Whilst the foundations for improvements have been laid through these initiatives and progress is being made, it will take several years before there is any significant impact on gender parity with pay. The authority will continue to strive to increase gender diversity in all areas of the organisation and continue its efforts to lower the gender pay gap. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yeah.
Well, I'd like to offer congratulations on the report, and congratulations for getting the gender pay gap figure of 13.8%, because I've been looking at one or two other fire authorities, Shropshire and the Wrekin and Cheshire and one or two others who've been unable to gather that figure this year due to the restrictions in COVID or whatever. So well done for doing that. Progress in every sense.
I have to agree with that. Well done. So the recommendations on page 17 that we note and approve for submission onto the government website on the gender pay gap report 2021. Are we in agreement?
Agreed.
Agreed. We then go to page 41, which is funding phase 2 leadership and management development programme. Is anybody going on? I know Anna's here. Anna, do you want to take us through this, please?
Yes, lovely. Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, everyone. This paper is asking members to note the positive evaluation of phase 1 of the Leadership and Management Development Programme and to approve the transfer of a £51,000 underspend in the 2021-22 Training Needs Analysis budget into a future funding reserve to be used within 22-23 to procure phase 2 of the programme and also fund a delegate onto the Executive Leadership Programme. Members approved a partial growth bid of £50,000 for investment into the Leadership and Management Development Programme in 21-22, with an invite to present for a further bid for the remaining funds needed to fully roll out the programme. Since then, it's become apparent through reviewing the budget for the training needs analysis versus what has been procured that there may no longer be a need for that additional growth bid, and that a forecasted underspend could be used to fund phase 2 instead. Phase 2 involves rolling the programme out to remaining established managers. This includes support staff, watch commanders and crew commanders if timing, crewing and funding allows. The underspend will also be used to fund one executive leadership programme place in 2023, which the authority has had 2 senior managers being successful in their application for. This proposal has been produced in consultation with finance, the training strategy group and procurement to ensure it meets all of their requirements also. To ensure the leadership programme content is fit for purpose and that both facilitators and delegates are engaged and finding value in attending, initial feedback in the form of a survey was sought from the attendees of cohorts 1 and 2. A summary of the feedback is contained within Appendix 2 and will be used to develop the content for the remaining cohorts of Phase 1, Phase 2 and adapt the facilitator's approach where it's needed. A more in-depth evaluation will also be undertaken as part of this project, which will include revisiting the initial audit undertaken as part of the project, reviewing appraisal performance ratings and the outcomes from the recent culture survey. Just for your information, once all existing managers have completed the programme, it will then become acquisition training for all new managers and leaders and development for any potential future managers and leaders. This will be delivered internally via the Learning and Development team, therefore no longer requiring additional funding to procure delivery by the external provider. I'm happy to take any questions.
Could I just ask one question on page 47? You put a graph there showing how people, the survey that you did. The one that's got the yellow, it says I was engaged with the facilitators throughout. It obviously says 13% disagree.
Yeah.
How many people is 13%? Is it an arm and a leg, or is it a 2? Was there a specific reason why they felt that?
I think those 2 particular individuals, the course or the programme served more as a refresher than new learning from them. And I think that's might have been where that frustration has stemmed from.
Any other questions?
Just so I completely understand the last comment you made,
Yes.
you've now trained a trainer, so we don't have to facilitate this externally.
Absolutely.
We now have a training facility.
Absolutely, yeah.
Excellent. Good.
Great. Super. So no questions, recommendation is on page 41 in 2 parts. Are we happy to agree that?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. We then will go on to the on-call fighter update. And we're going to have a presentation from Jamie Humphrey, Station Commander for on-call North and South. Gosh, you're busy.
That's noted.
Officially.
You saw I said it in front of the right person. And also Gavin Garvell, who's the on-call support manager, North. Gentlemen, the floor's yours.
Yes, Madam Chairman, Vice Chairman, members and senior management team, thank you for having us to provide this on-call firefighter update. As already said, my name is Jamie Humphrey. I'm a station commander responsible for the on-call stations North and South.
I'm Gavin Garvell, obviously on-call support manager for the North. I'm also attached to Outsley on-call as North Commander as well.
If I could politely ask for questions to come at the end of the presentation, just because we've got quite a lot of content to get through. It's going to take about 20 minutes to get through the presentation. Okay. Thank you. So the aim of this presentation is to provide members with an update on the current on-call position and the strategy moving forward. So in order for me to provide you with an update on the current on-call position, it's pertinent to provide some information, some background information and an overview of the important work and projects taken through the government since 2015 that has led us up to this point. So giving you a bit of a background on the journey. So between 2010 and 2012, Buckinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service on-call establishment was just above 200 employees. From 2013 to 2018, this figure has slowly declined to approximately 116 employees. Some of this has been through natural attrition and a change in financial landscape of the service. However, there are a number of other reasons for this decline, some of which sit outside of our control. And I can give you some examples. There is evidence to suggest that recruiting on-call firefighters has become more challenging due to local industries or reduction in those local industries. And who could, basically for the staff to be released from those local industries. And then the need for people in the local communities to commute further away from their home addresses to find work. And there's also a retention issue where we're finding it more challenging retaining our staff due to on-call employees losing interest and leaving the service after only a couple of years due to the realisation of what the role actually entails in terms of service needs and expectations placed upon the on-call or the modern on-call firefighter. So this next slide, this is not just an issue isolated to Buckinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service. As you can see from the slide, our neighbouring fire and rescue services are in a similar position and have suffered the retention losses over that period of time. The National Fire Chiefs Council, the NFCC, recognises nationally and in 2019 launched an on-call firefighter #NeedsMore recruitment campaign to support fire and rescue services across the country working in collaboration to encourage recruitment and educate the public about the on-call roles, especially from the underrepresented groups. The service are signed up to the national campaign and have a number of employees on the National Fire Service Council, the NFCC local practitioners group, exploring innovative recruitment strategies. The service are also in regular communication with neighbouring fire and rescue services, sharing ideas around the attraction and retention of on-call employees. So a little bit about our financial background. The on-call budget was reduced in 2020-2021 when zero-based budgeting was introduced. The budget was reduced from 1.8 million and 186 full-time equivalent posts to the current just over 1 million and 96 full-time equivalent posts. The budget was reduced as a result of year-on-year underspends and the service not reaching the full-time equivalent post threshold. This budget was reallocated to other areas of the organisation that are under financial pressure. These figures include all costs associated for the on-call, including salary, training, allowances, national insurance and pension costs, etc. The figures above outline budgeted full-time equivalent posts and it does not represent the actuals, the establishment actuals. This will be highlighted in the presentation later. So a little bit about our journey. In 2015, the Strategic Review of Operational Resourcing Project was undertaken to analyse the operational availability the service had in place for providing emergency cover through risk and demand modelling. Evidence supported that the service didn't necessarily require all the 18 on-call appliances to be available at the same time. In 2016, the service commissioned the external company ORH to complete risk profile deployment modelling. ORH modelled a large number of deployment scenarios put forward by the service, and the resulting report highlighted the optimal response for the service was based on the station locations as 15 appliances. This consisted of 12 immediate response appliances, which are whole time appliances, and 3 appliances up to 10-minute response, which are on-call appliances. This was during the day. This figure changed to 8 immediate and 7 delayed during the night to take into account of our day crew stations becoming a delayed response at night time. Following this, and in the same year, the service then published operational resourcing guidance. And then in early 2017, the service developed its new response model and introduced new flexible crew arrangements. This included a new flexible on-call contract which incorporated a phased response to recalling on-call firefighters and consisted of 4 lines of availability. When the strategic review of operational resourcing project was completed in 2017, a programme reset was implemented and the project renamed to the Development of Operational Resourcing Programme. The aim of the programme was to support delivery of the new response model and consisted of 4 key areas of focus.
The Development of Operational Resourcing Programme, the DOOR project, have 4 key areas of focus: improving standards on immediate response to appliances, develop the role of the on-call firefighter, increase availability of frontline appliances, and increase availability of specialist and support appliances. Key area focus 2 incorporated the development of new on-call contracts and employment. So this was designed to provide a greater degree of flexibility for employees and improve on-call appliance availability. Contract and proposition would also be more attractive for prospective employees. Historically, an on-call firefighter could only provide cover to their local fire station by remaining within a 5-minute catchment area. The new contract recognises the commitment required by on-call employees and is designed with more realistic expectations. The contract allows them to move outside the 5-minute catchment area, with the first-line response increasing to 10 minutes. In addition to this, they can also provide a tiered or delayed response. Second line allows a response time of 20 minutes, third line of up to an hour, and fourth line after 3 hours. This provides the service with the availability to increase its response at times of high demand. This also removes the need for individuals to take their appliance off the run. They need to travel further than 10 minutes out of their catchment area of their base station. Postcode checker you see on the screen above enables prospective employees to see if they live within the catchment area prior to applying for the service of an on-call firefighter. All new on-call employees now sign up to the new contract.
So our current on-call status, the service current on-call establishment as of February 2020 sits at 120 employees, which equates to 82 full-time equivalent posts. So that 120 figure is the actual establishment based upon 82 full-time equivalent posts. Numbers had increased at the beginning of the year to 124 employees, but have reduced due to some being successful in our whole time and flexi firefighter recruitment campaign. The current establishment is made up of 80 just on-call employees, plus 40 whole-time employees on secondary on-call contracts. Of the 120 employees, 31% are still on the existing old on-call contract, 62% are on the new flexible on-call contract, and 7% provide us just with positive hours only, and that's due to being the flexi firefighters, where they can't be on a retainer. We've started to see a steady increase in recruitment in 2018 when switching to running our online virtual awareness evenings, where people could attend the event without having to travel from their homes. This resulted in approximately 60 candidates starting the selection process and generally resulted in 10 people being employed at the end of each process. Kevin will outline the recruitment process in the next slide. Recruitment numbers have recently plateaued. Some of this could be down to the pandemic. No evidence of that yet. However, more evidence points towards a distinct lack of advertising for on-call recruitment campaigns. We currently only advertise for on-call firefighters on our website, fire station recruitment banners that you'll see around the county, and on the NFCC website, which registers the interest of potential candidates that reside in Buckinghamshire. Previously, we've seen increases in attracting prospective on-call employees following serious incidents where we've subsequently posted social media campaigns targeted the local communities near to where the incidents have happened. This has attracted and driven larger numbers to our website and the awareness events.
Our current recruitment process is ongoing with 2 intakes a year, usually January and August. The process begins by candidates attending an online awareness evening, where they are fully briefed on the service and what it entails to be an on-call firefighter. At the end of the awareness evening, interested candidates request an application pack. Applications are then received and sifted, with successful candidates being invited to take SHL tests. These consist of psychometric talent screening and include English and maths if they should not have the relevant grades. This is a stage where we lose most of our candidates. We have set a national standard pass rate of 36%, but still lose large numbers at this stage. This is something that we are monitoring. Candidates successfully at the SHL stage are invited to role-related tests where they are tested against practical elements of the firefighter role. Interviews then take place and with that being successful, complete the process with medicals and DBS checks. Offers of employment are then sent. Recent recruitment campaigns have seen declining numbers, which in turn has resulted in fewer candidates being successful at the end of the process.
So our strategy in moving forward, the service has spent some considerable time and effort in developing its response model, which is on the screen, the development of operational resourcing programme, and the current on-call proposition, which is both innovative and unique to our service. The on-call support team are working on a strategy to complete the objectives originally set out in the development of operational resourcing programme or project. The strategy is envisaged to take 12 to 18 months and place a focus on increasing on-call appliance availability in order to achieve the response model, so the 12 and 3, and I'll focus on the 3 on-call stations. The strategy focuses on 5 key areas, and they are key on-call stations through risk and response modelling, employee engagement, which encompasses the on-call contract, recruitment, training and development, and systems integration and development. In order to understand if the profile and deployment model provided by ORH in 2016 is still optimal, the data team conducted up-to-date response modelling, which covered all incident types within Buckinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service and was based on North, Central and South scenarios. The on-call calculations have been made on the assumption that good performance is based on the average attendance time to all incidents. The response modelling identified 3 key stations as Buckingham, Aylesbury and Princess Risborough. This is the most up-to-date modelling for the service. However, the data team continue to work on response modelling that includes simultaneous activity, different incident types, future risks and potential future demand, which may influence changes to key station locations in the coming years. I haven't touched on the resilience or hubbing of the stations, as this, I understand, will be covered in this afternoon's session.
So to provide greater flexibility and to support the response model, we need to move all on-call employees who are on the old contract onto the new flexible contract, which enables both immediate and tiered response. Consultation has taken place over a period of months with representative bodies who support the new contract. Furthermore, a series of employee engagement sessions were carried out in February this year to educate and inform all those on existing contracts of the benefits and flexibility of the new contract offers. Letters have been drafted and sent out to staff inviting them to move onto the new contract. A review will take place in April to identify how many remain on the existing contract, and a report will be shared with SMT.
So recruitment, this is profiling target campaigns. To enable the key stations to operate as 24/7 first-line resources, it's been identified that the service will need to recruit approximately 20 on-call employees across all 3 stations and target them for daytime availability. To enable this and to significantly ramp up the recruitment of on-call employees, a small number of the on-call working group are focusing purely on recruitment. The main purpose of the group is to ultimately increase the attraction and recruitment of on-call employees by targeting the right people that live in the right place who can provide the right availability. The group are currently working on a completely new approach to recruitment. This new approach will see campaigns built using personas to help identify the profile of prospective employees. A persona is a semi-fictional portrayal of a marketing audience we want to target. It assists in focusing on the target market for our on-call vacancies. The group will develop organic posts and ads that speak to the target customers we've chosen once we've defined our on-call applicant personas. This information will be used in the first instance to run targeted campaigns aimed at daytime availability for the key stations, and will be pushed out through a number of media platforms. This approach can then be used to target gaps at other stations. The on-call working group are also looking at ways to streamline the training and development of on-call employees. The group are looking at revising the modular training in order to significantly reduce the time it takes to train an on-call employee, thus removing some of the frustrations employees face at that time frame, which could be up to 12 months. This will in turn improve retention. Collaborative on-call training with our neighbouring fire and rescue services is also an option and is currently being explored.
So finally, our resources system, fire service rotor, is now fully integrated with Vision, our mobilising system used by Thames Valley Fire Control Service, and now auto detects the level of appliance availability. This is based on the availability of individual users and no longer requires employees to manually update control. This work was key to enabling our on-call employees to book different lines of appliance availability and importing themselves to different stations, providing a delayed response, which then automatically updates appliance availability to Thames Valley Fire Control Service. From April the 1st, on-call appliance availability will be monitored more closely. The service will have a clearer picture of how many on-call employees are on the new flexible contract by this point, and staff will be encouraged to look at their availability and where possible, amend this to increase appliance availability at their base location or other stations. Where crewing opportunities exist, the resource management team will encourage staff to bring appliances on the run by utilising their tiered response, especially where their base station is off the run. This will be reviewed regularly. This will be reviewed at regular intervals and reported through a monthly RMT pump availability report by the Group Commander of Resourcing of Head of Prevention, Response and Resilience. This slide shows an example of an on-call station utilising a mixture of first line and tiered response to maintain appliance availability. The service is working with fire service rotor to develop messages that on-call employees receive in relation to pump availability and crewing opportunities and possible stations.
The service is already starting to see a marked increase in on-call appliance availability. This slide shows an example of our daily ridership. It's just one example. We're seeing an increase predominantly during the evenings and weekends and during periods of high demand. For instance, when storm units hit the UK, when it hit the UK recently, the on-call were contacted directly by the ops support room or the ops support team to make themselves available at their station as an immediate response or by supporting a local station through the tiered response. We had some success with this. I'm therefore confident this will increase in the coming months and culminate in achieving our response model, with the key stations providing a first line response. Although we anticipate this could take some 12 to 18 months to see a marked improvement. The progress update will be provided to members this time next year. So how can you help? We politely request that members engage or continue to engage with the local communities across the county, raising the profile and the importance of the on-call firefighter role. We'd ask that you signpost people from the local communities to the Buckinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service website and the recruitment campaigns, and then support financial investment for on-call growth. And that's the end of the presentation. So thank you for listening, and I'll take any I'm happy to take questions. Sorry.
Do we have some questions? I thought you did.
I'm not covering for Councillor Hall's questions. I'm sure he would have loved to have been here himself. Firstly, thank
So
you
can
very.
I just say, did you then have questions?
Yes, I have my own questions. Yeah. Thank you.
Go through it.
Firstly, great presentation. So, would you be able to share it with us so we can have a look in more depth, if that's possible? With regards to the website and recruitment, I'm just making some notes as I was going along. It talks about the pay that could be expected for the new contract, and then further down it talks about could be out 2-3 times a week, a few hours at a time. So when you then factor in someone getting to a competent stage with 3 call outs a week potentially, 2 to 3 hours, the numbers look substantially better than what the website it says on offer, between 1,500 and 3,000. It could be more than that. And I'm not saying money is the driver and everything, but you can't have on the website one way, this could be 2-3 evenings a week, but you're only going to earn £1,500 a year. To me, I think that needs to be looked at in terms of the overall how it's presented. Because if I get the members in Princess Risborough to push joining the fire thing, the first thing someone's going to look at is what is the package. And the package looks quite low on the income side and then quite onerous on the number of evenings and stuff. So maybe you want to have a look at, what is the average actual time that people are going out? What is the actual pay?
If you don't mind, can I take this? So absolutely great question. And it's kind of feeding into a lot of what I'm trying to achieve. So I can share a dashboard that is being utilised in social media and it's having some real good impact from another fire rescue service. And I kind of want to adopt the idea and integrate it in our social media posts. And the dashboard basically gives an overview of the on-call station that we're currently recruiting for, the numbers of incidents they would potentially be going out on, the time that they'd be out on that incident. So that could be used as information to take to their employer to say, look, it's not a great impact to you because most incident types they're only out for an hour and a half, etc. It also would highlight the average earnings of that station on based on data that we would have to collate from the data team, and we'd like to push it out to social media, so people have got a real good understanding and a snapshot of what they could earn, how many incidents they'd be going out to, and how long they'd be out for, and how it would impact their personal and work-life balance.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something that I'm looking at.
Excellent.
Have you got any other questions?
Yeah.
No. Do you have any questions?
No, I don't. No. Excellent presentation.
Peter, yeah.
More of an operational question. If, because of the numbers, we'll no doubt talk about this afternoon, if the numbers, if a client is on the run and that station doesn't get the right amount of staff that day, and therefore it has to rely on an on-call firefighter, is that appliance judged on the run or off the run?
So are you, if the way I interpret the question is that you relate to our whole time appliances,
Yeah.
where we're using our on-call members of staff under positive hours to bring that appliance on the run. My understanding in looking at daily ridership, that is an available resource. It is a whole time, because it's based upon like an 8 hour on the on-call. It's based upon an 8 hour or more response, becoming a first line responsibility in green. So it affects our daily ridership figures. So like 12 and 1 or 12 and 2, 12 and 3. If they're utilised for the whole time, then that appliance is on the run. Does that answer?
But they might not be in the building.
So there are circumstances, I'm thinking of a fire station, not in Milton Keynes, whereby, for example, you have 3 whole time available in the building, and they supplemented that whole time fire engine with 1 on-call person 5 minutes away. So the appliance itself is available, it's on the run, and it would, if it was mobilised, what would happen is the call would come through, Thames Valley Fire Control would then put it into it would be nominated, but it would be nominated with the 5-minute turn-in time calculated in terms of the turnout. So it will always send, Thames Valley Fire Control will always send the fastest fire engine, but it would factor in that there's probably a 5-minute delay in that individual turning into the fast. Is that the bit you're after.
So I'm misinterpreting what you, I thought you were going along the lines of an on-call employee actually going to the station, providing positive hours on the station. Yeah, Chief's just answered the question in relation to if they're providing that from their home address.
Can I just ask, because I genuinely don't, I think I understand, but this isn't really an issue for Milton Keynes in the sense that this is an old bucks issue, as it were, in terms of because of the 5 minute issue, etc., to call out. Are we recruiting? Well, I presume we're not recruiting on-call fire persons in Milton Keynes to cover. To cover rest of but or to cover absentees in the full-time fire provision in the stations in Milton Keynes.
I can probably answer most of that. Yeah, we do have on-call appliances in Milton Keynes.
Right.
Only.
Of course,
is one of those. It's a standalone on-call.
Yeah.
And that's one of the stations where, when you look at its proximity, is one that we do focus on.
Yeah.
But we have 2 on-call appliances here. And one at Broughton as well, but that's more from a resilience perspective.
Yeah.
So if Milton Keynes does get busy, then those on-call provide that additional resilience during those periods.
Yeah.
And again, that's something we'll probably touch on a lot more this afternoon.
Yeah.
As well around those areas. But yeah, we do have 3 additional on-call appliances between West Ashland and Broughton. But we do recruit to, and they do provide us with additional resilience when we do have those, thankfully, quite rare busy occasions.
Oh.
Can I ask you some questions? You mentioned tests and people weren't coming up to scratch on maths and something else. Do you help those people? You know, if you think that they could be somebody that you could employ, do you help them to actually overcome that?
Yeah, and again, Madam Chairman, in this last recruitment campaign, we've very much done that, working in liaison with HR and Anne's nodding her head in the agreement. We looked at the tests and the percentages they were getting in each area, and we are offering that support mechanism now for each area of the process, the recruitment process. But in particular to the SHL tests, we are finding that's the majority where the prospective employees drop out. And some of our whole-time establishment staff have been sent those tests and actually done them and have failed them. I'm not going to mention their names, but that just shows the degree of how hard some of those tests actually are, especially if you're not fresh out of school. So it's definitely something we're looking into. It's used nationally. We sort of set the national standard in terms of the pass rate. But in the recent recruitment campaign, we offered the candidates that come close to the pass mark the opportunity to do it again. And we subsequently have those pass.
So you've then said that you are putting together the strategy and that you reckon that will take you 12 to 18 months to put into place. Is that because of what you're trying to do and ensure that what you're going to be doing with on-call, like firefighters, actually feeds in so the strategy fits what you're trying to do now? Is that what you're trying to do?
The time frames to enable us to really focus and ramp up the recruitment, because I think if you look nationally, it's recruiting and attracting on-call to the service is where a lot of fire rescue services are struggling. So it needs to give us that time frame to enable us to really work on our recruitment strategy. So it's to get those people into play, and that's sort of the time frame we envisaged before we start seeing results. Our next recruitment campaign, so we've already got the candidates coming through for the August intake this year. Our next intake would have been January 23. We've delayed it by a couple of months just to give us the breathing space to work on this kind of strategy. So the next intake will be aimed at March 2023, where we're looking to take quite a number of employees to fill this gap.
And do you find that because we tend to be a more service-based industry now rather than hands-on, that's causing you problems with your recruitment?
I can't really answer that question. So, sorry.
Okay.
Not that I don't understand it. I'm
No,
not sure. I don't
Yes.
have really how to respond to that. Sorry.
No, it's just that at one time we used to have a lot of industry where people were, they were there all the time, and their employer was quite happy for people to work with the fire service, whereas today, service industry, you know, the logistics in the service industry is so different
Yeah.
to what it was, you know, before. You then said that you've been putting out new contracts, and those are out at the moment for consultation. And are there any problems with your new contract and your old contract? Does it take away any benefits or anything like that?
No, there is. So we've run a number of engagement sessions, and we've actually consulted with the direct bodies as well, based around this piece of work, and it's really the education piece for the engagement session, the education piece to say that you're not going to be at financial detriment. Like I think that was what people thought was going to impact them financially. And there is a scenario that exists within the new flexible contract. And I'll use the example on the old contracts, we had a 90-hour contract or 120-hour contract, which is either a 75% retainer or the 100% retainer. On our new contract, we've got a retainer where they can provide 90 hours of split between 60 hours of immediate response and 30 hours tiered response, so like a delayed response. And if they move on to that contract, it's less immediate response hours by 30 hours a week, which gives them a better work-life balance. It's actually an increase in money financially. It's £300 more annually. So there are these circumstances where they are better off than that. In terms of the legal side and the terms and conditions, they almost look identical. The only sort of section within the new contract is based around tiered response. So a delayed response to providing what we call the resilience to other stations.
And you then said that you were defining your target audience. How do you do that?
Yeah. So I wish that Emily Hilling was in the room, our new communications and marketing. She's from a marketing background, as you know, building the personas, which will help us really drive our recruitment campaigns at targeting the people we think as a group would be able to provide that crucial daytime availability, because I think that's across the country where fire and rescue services struggle.
Yeah.
So we're making sure they're sort of gender neutral. We're looking at different diverse parts of the community as well. So we're building these semi-fictional personas based upon what we think, obviously the gold standard, what we think would be, provide us exactly this and scale it back. So it's not just one; it's a number of personas we're working with, we're creating. And as I said in the presentation, that will create organic posts then that we can push out through social media. Because I think the strength is in social media to target people now. It's generally the platform that most people use.
And a lot of YouTube as well.
Yeah.
You then said that your modular training was also helping because people learn, they didn't have to learn everything, they could do the modular training over 12 months. So once you've done your modular training, do you then lose your on-call firefighter to other fire authorities because they're trained?
Potentially. I think in terms of the areas of retention, so we're suffering retention. Some of it was, like I said in the earlier slides, where although we do an awareness evening, when we give everything, the nuts and bolts about what it is to be an on-call firefighter, warts and all, we don't hold back. We do that because in the past we found that we weren't perhaps given all the information and saying about the more dull parts of the role, if you like, just so they're updated and informed, to alleviate the people losing interest because of the true expectations of what it is to be an on-call. And it is a real commitment, and like Councillor Wolf said, not for a lot of financial remuneration.
Yes.
So yeah, it's an area we're working on, but I think one of the key areas was, and the feedback we're getting is from on-call staff, if the modular training is carried out, so from the time they attend an awareness evening, the first awareness evening, to the time they're deemed a competent firefighter, that could take up to 12 months, if not in some circumstances longer. If they miss one of the modular training courses because of leave or they can't get the time off from work, they might get bounced into the next year. So we're looking at streamlining that process. And taking in some ideas from other fire and rescue services, our neighbouring partners, where they do two-week courses, condense it. Yeah. And what that gives in return, it gives us a firefighter that's trained a lot quicker. and they're an available resource to us as well. So there's benefits back to us as well as them.
And then one of the points you said was you want members to assist you with recruitment.
Yeah.
What are you going to give to us to help you with your recruitment?
That's a really good question, and one I wasn't prepared for. And that's my answer.
But seriously, if we have the tools to help with recruitment,
yeah,
because we go into different parts of the community,
yeah,
maybe that's something also that could be considered.
Absolutely. I was involved in around about the Olney incident, and at that time, it being a sensitive nature, we were invited to the local council meeting. So I can use that as an example. If you can, that inroad and that getting me into those meetings, I'm more than happy to come and pitch and give a presentation on what it is to be a local firefighter for people in the local community. I'm more than happy to do that.
But the thing with that is that you've got to give us something that we can go out to our communities, because not everybody will come to a council meeting or to a community board meeting, because, well, if you want to watch paint drying, that's
No.
So you've really got to give us something that we can send out to residents' associations, because within those residents' associations are young people who are now looking for employment.
Okay.
And that can then be sent round to all those residents' associations,
sure,
and they wouldn't come to meetings like that. So you've got to think of the tools that you can give us to help you.
Just on that, we have been developing some sort of flyers and cards with QR codes and stuff on. So there will be some more literature that's coming for. That was sort of done for more of the whole time campaign, but we will be translating that across as well. So there's a lot of work going on in the back.
I think we'd have something. Absolutely.
I could use another example where I went into place around the Olney, that council meeting where Councillor McLean kindly invited me to that, and I think it was Phone Box magazine that were invited, and I think Councillor McLean knew that individual, or someone in the service knew that individual, and they were happy to do a free pitch for us in that. So we worked in collaboration and put an article out, went out to 27,000 homes across that area, and that did directly result in 2 employees being employed at Olney.
There is a Marlowe magazine, so it might be worthwhile finding it. In fact, I know the printer of that, so I'll try and see if we can get you into that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there are parish magazines across the whole of the county, certainly across the whole of Milton Keynes, so you can get that degree of coverage at little or no cost through those magazines. So I really think you need to pitch down that, because whilst I fully accept social media is desperately popular, people tend to trust parish magazines in a way that they don't trust magazines from a senior authority or from other commercial bodies. So I really would push that particular aspect. Can I just ask, how many, if any, part-time on-call fire persons go on then to see it as a way into the service and go on to become full-time fire person?
It absolutely is a direct route. We take on-call firefighters directly into our collective firefighter roles currently.
Right.
And the NFCC are working fresh off the press on a process where the whole time the on-call can go straight into the whole time. And I know I've spoken to Anna Collette in the past, who's in the room, about that. Is it an option that we could write a similar sort of procedure or process?
And are the remuneration rates set nationally, or do we have some degree of local flexibility around that?
That I'm looking over the shoulder.
The actual retainer piece is set nationally by the National Joint Council, but then because it's based on numbers of calls, so actually it depends on whether you're a busy station or not quite so busy station, and then other opportunities to earn as well. So there's obviously they get paid for their training hours, which is weekly, but equally with our on call as well, because we do have the bank system as well. Once they are competent and fully skilled up, they can then, if it's not a detriment to their sort of home appliance, if you like, they can do bank shifts as well, which are paid at a full rate as well. So there are other opportunities. So the base pay is absolutely set nationally, but then there are fluctuations locally around numbers of calls and the ability to earn more money doing different shifts and other pieces. The piece around the on-call recruitment through into whole time has always been an issue for us, because you're using some of your most valuable resources that are providing you with cover, you know, in those areas that are particularly hard to recruit from, and then they become whole-time firefighters and you lose that resource. But it's not a reason to not do it, because we're still getting the benefit of that individual as well that we've trained. So, you know, this is an age-old issue, and I always, you know, sort of mentioned I've got a book in my office which was it's called Recruitment and Retention of Retained Firefighters and the Issues with It, and the date on it was by the Office of the Deputy Prime Minister. I think it was 2001 it was written, and if you scrub that date out and put 2022, it's the same. It's the same book.
John Prescott.
Yeah, I think it probably was. Yeah. So it's these are issues we've been wrestling with for a long time. But the new proposition that Jamie's been describing around the new contracts seems to be getting some traction and working quite well.
And is the intake is January and August, although you just talked about March. Would March and October not seem more sensible, or is that set nationally as well, the intake?
I think that's set by us personally.
Right.
Yeah, so it's twice a year intake. I think originally he was looking at the retention and the attraction of, so it was just to get at least 10 in, because 10s are sort of key number for training courses.
Yeah.
A minimum of 10. So we'd strive for that. I'd like to see more. I'd like to, if we can attract more to service, I'd like to be pushing to say I need growth. I think, you know, and looking at those growth bids. This is where I want to get to, even holding balls like we have the whole time.
They strike those curious months to select, though, January and August, for obvious reasons. You'd think there's some bars to come in at that period, whereas March and October, for example, are more, maybe more attractive. But I mean, I just think you have to think about the whole mix about all of this, and you know, question everything at the moment.
It's definitely something I can float at the working group, the on-call working group meeting, just to see what the appetite would be.
Yeah. Peter?
Yeah. So life's complex, isn't it? So sort of relates to both what Matthew and you said, Chairs. If I was to ask you, what are the three main drivers that you come across for people to become on-call firefighters? So it won't be the same for everybody, but of course there'll be a list, and whether it's remuneration or whether it's time or whether it's wanting to serve the community. What are those three main drivers? Yeah. Because all the questions that we're asking, so to speak, are: is it about finance? Is it about money? Is it about where you live? Etc. Etc. But if you know those three things, you can then target your audience. But you can all then, as the authority, it's then up to us to provide the resources to shape you being able to hit those three main things. So what are those three main things?
So there's more than three, believe it or not. So it's a shame I haven't got the personas.
I'm sure there'll be a myriad of them, because life is complex, but there'll always be a top three.
So we built. So again, I've got that piece of work that we're doing on personas, which we've now finalised the personas, and I'm working with Emily just to get that finalised before we start looking at our posts that we're going to serve and which platforms we're going to drive this out on. But part of the building of persona for an on-call firefighter was, what do they actually need? What are the needs of this individual? Why do they want to do it? And there are a number which you've just touched on. One of the pretty much the top three. So it's remuneration, it's serving the community, sense of belonging, and that feeds into how is this served? How is an organisation or service is it served? So how do they get that from us? And that's how we build the personas.
Because obviously, as an authority, we're about to have a conversation about the model of the authority and what that looks like going forward. Now, if somebody in Olney, Woburn Sands, Wolverton, signs up because they want to serve the north of Milton Keynes, or Woburn Sands and Apsley guys and Woburn, but we're saying it's all right, you could be called out in Marlow, that is a driver away, isn't it? Because you're not serving your local community anymore, you're serving the big brigade. And so these are questions I think we need to ask when we're thinking about what sort of authority and what sort of model we want as an authority going forward. So it would be really helpful to have that information, and what the right balance is between sort of retained firefighters and full-time firefighters and on call. So when we're thinking about what the model of the authority we want to look like in 5 years, then we have that. Then we have the knowledge that we're putting the right resources in the right places. They would be my questions, Chair.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I think, and that changes as well. So that bit around that sort of community sort of spirit, community spirited people wanting to serve their local community. That's kind of like the traditional on-call model. I think there's one of the big attractions was when it did become a gateway into the whole time service. So then you get a slightly different kind of persona there, because you get someone that will just see it as a stepping stone in, rather than being that sort of, they'll still be community spirited because they want to be a public servant. But then we're fishing from a slightly different pool because we're in there with all the other public services as well. But that whole traditional bit, and we've seen it over the years with different on-call stations where sometimes it almost becomes like the family. You'll see they've all got very, very similar surnames at a station, and if one leaves, they all tend to leave. And so I don't think there isn't like a silver bullet, but those top three things I think can be different things. But it's definitely that community spirit piece, especially around traditional on-call. That is absolutely the hook, I think.
What else I think I would like to see what the utilisation is, because 90 hours is what, 168 hours in a week. Yeah. There's no more or less. It's always 168 hours in a week. 90 hours is over 50% of that. And I think we did the maths, didn't we, in the meeting that we had recently at night. You say £3,000 is the average that somebody gets. Yeah. No, that's over the course of a year. I think it's less than £1 an hour that an on-call firefighter would get. That's fine if they're being called out not at all, or if they're being called out lots and lots. I suspect in the middle, it's like, am I giving up my Friday, Saturday, and Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights, and not being called out and getting less than £1 an hour? That's a big ask for somebody to not do anything. So I'd like to see that. One helpful thing would also to be able to see the utilisation rates of people as well. So being called out 50% of the time, they're only being called out once a year, you're not going to do it, are you? Because it's not the time that you're used. I suspect part of the pull as well is the time that you're not used is a bigger disincentive, because you're not doing what you want to do, but you're getting all the disbenefits. You can't drink, you can't have a drink on a Friday night, you can't go out, you can't do all that sort of stuff. So you can't go on holiday, etc., etc. So it's a what do you call it? It's a freedom is the wrong word, but it's a sort of impingement on your freedoms.
Restriction.
It's that's a good word. It's a restriction on what you can do. But if you're then not being called out, that's not great. If you're being called out lots and lots, it's also not great. So it's that balance, and where a proper balance lies to construct a good model that people would want to come to. I noted the Lib Dem like graph earlier, which was sort of like 116 to 120, but in reality that's 4 people. Yeah. And so it seems to be you're doing a lot of work for 4 people, and something obviously needs to improve.
I think as we look forward, I mean, there's probably a discussion about the shape and the size of the service as we move forward. The other thing to take into account as well is mobilisation principles have changed over the last, with the Thames Valley Fire Control, all of a sudden borderless mobilising, you've got mobilised the fastest pump, and because of that reason, if you go back 10-15 years, we would try to mobilise pumps within the Buckinghamshire Milton Keynes area first. So actually the point about the mobilisation opportunities, if you like, looking forward, have probably reduced in the last 10 years for on-call fighters, because you will always send the quickest. So and that will automatically mostly attract a whole-time fire engine, because they are the quickest, because they're immediately available. And there's all of that work, I think, that we need to consider moving forward, to think about actually what is the shape, what is the size of the authority, and how do we get our best bang for our buck, not just for the individuals, but also for the community. And that's the bit, I think, that's the broader conversation, isn't it?
Ultimately, it's a return on capital, isn't it? And opportunity cost lost or gained. And if David was to write an article for his local parish magazine, which then my in-laws get,
That's not a very good magazine.
Yes.
I expect the articles to be written for me.
It's a very good magazine.
There used to be somebody in Woburn House used to write them for me.
And I'm sure that the way that they exercise their democratic right is different locally than it is nationally. However, the point is that the target audience is that if he goes about spending his time writing a magazine piece to say, sign up to be a retained firefighter to help Woburn Sands, and that's not the model that we want, well, he's wasted his time. The people that have applied are wasting their time, and your hit rate goes down. You're effectively, your pipeline conversion rate is lower, isn't it? Whereas actually, if it's, you need to be young and mobile and need to go anywhere within not just Buckinghamshire, but the Thames Valley, then that's a different subset, and you'd probably not want to spend your time writing for the Marlowe magazine. So it's that, it's that understanding of who the archetype or archetypes are that then would enable us to understand, both as councillors but as an authority, where to put that capital.
And I think that's the next step in the model in terms of the actual, in that point, in terms of when we look at the numbers of on-call appliances that we've got and the event, you know, the turning time 5 minutes an hour and all of that sort of stuff. That's the next step, isn't it?
It's the form follows function piece. It's look at what the function is that we want to provide, and then form of how we take that will dictate what type of person we're going to be targeting around that, whether it's going to be the, you know, sort of the local community spirit people, or the stepping stone type arrangement, or just a slightly change in the proposition. Because some services where they've got a huge geography, where they haven't got the luxury of having quite a lot of whole-time fire engines through, and I've done in Somerset done some work on this, where they've got some on-call stations that the next nearest station is half an hour away. So they've gone down a different route where they pay for availability. So it's different again to having a retainer, but they know that between the hours of this and this, we absolutely need that appliance available. So
Even
they
though
pay,
the calls are very low.
yeah, even though the calls are low, but they know they need someone because there's nothing else. Then they pay for availability in another way. And we are looking at all of those different bespoke models, because one size doesn't fit all, which we've learned over the years as well. So yeah, all of that challenge is really helpful. And as I say, if we can get that the functional bit right, and then the form that follows it will probably look clumsy, but will probably meet our needs. And as I say, Jamie and the team have done some cracking work on it to get us where we are already, which is why we wanted to sort of showcase it today.
Through you, Chair, thank you. We had this conversation before, and I do tend to live in the past because I'm this sort of age now. But in Woburn Sands, when we had an on-call fire station before Broughton opened, everybody who was a firefighter at Woburn Sands worked in Plyso, which was the plastic factory, which is just on the opposite side of the road, which worked free shift working 7 days a week, and had the full support of the management. In fact, the encouragement, you were encouraged as a Plyso employee, if you were male, and those are the days, and it was just male, you would be encouraged to be, you know, a firefighter at Woburn Sands Fire Station. So they had a waiting list of people to join those crews. And taking your point about, you know, you often see the same names, I always thought of that sort of situation being a bit like a land-based lifeboat.
Yeah.
It was that sort of family tradition, because people from the same family worked at the. Are there many of those sort of instances in other parts of Milton, of Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes, where we could start to look at recruiting through public-spirited businesses, especially manufacturing businesses that might offer shift working, to see if we can get that sort of degree and level of coverage? Is that a fertile hunting ground, as it were?
I think it is just one strand of what we look to achieve. I know Paul's Game's done some significant work in going out to local businesses. He reached out to a large number. I don't have that figure to hand. I can get it for you, but the success rate was not good.
Right.
So I know.
I mean, I'm talking 25 years ago, but 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And the world has changed.
I think it just stems back to, you know, everyone's working a bit leaner. You know, those industries that are in our local communities are suffering similar financial pressures as we would as a service or organisational authority, but and they aren't in that position to release the staff what they used to be able to have that luxury to do that. But I would definitely look as one element of that recruitment to try and target those people, because, like the Deputy Chief said, we do need those community firefighters. It's not just about, you know, firefighters turning out to house actions. We do need in those local rural communities.
Just for interest, they demolished the Plyso factory primarily to build a home for Captain Marlowe's in-laws.
That's called. That's called taking the conversation full circle.
Yes, it hasn't. thought of talking to the local enterprise partnerships, because we have two different, I don't know which one you would have here. I don't know.
In
your
Northamptonshire, I think.
Yeah.
That's a-
Yeah,
Semlet, you have
Semlet, yeah,
Semlet.
it's Semlet,
And
yeah.
then we have TV, don't we? Have you thought about talking to the local enterprise partnerships? So you've got two.
Right.
And they hook into the businesses. And you might actually pick up some businesses that you might not have thought
Okay.
are the ones to actually chat to.
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because of all the work that's gone on with the Armed Forces Covenant and allowing business and convincing businesses to allow people to be used work, but sort of opt out of work when the time is right for being a reservist, but very little of the same profile is given to retain an on-call firefighter.
I wonder if that's something that we ought to see if we could push, because if you can get, councils have actually signed up to the Armed Forces Covenant, haven't they, and things like that. So why can't we look at sort of a firefighters covenant where businesses can sign up saying that they're happy for their members of staff to actually do
That's a really
that?
good idea. It's something that the council could certainly push through. With the business awards tonight, it's one of those things that actually, had you known about the business awards, it might have been a good thing that Jason can go and sort of
nominate a business award,
or go and speak to. I mean, there's a plethora of breakfast clubs. Usually the same people attend each one with a different name, but it's that sort of, that's the audience, isn't it? To say, look, it's good for your bit. It's how they did it with the Armed Forces Covenant, isn't it? It's good for you and good for your business to allow your staff members to be on-call firefighters. Because obviously the worry of the business is somebody's in the middle of sending a vital email about, the deal from accounts about this year's year end, and suddenly they're off fighting a fire, but it's not like that, is it? So
we've got a couple of things there. But business first. I don't know whether.
It's Adrian Brown's doing it.
No, it's
Pick up a battery.
it's the guy from Pinewood now. The sponsor.
Andrew
Smith.
Yeah. Adrian, I think, stepped down and Andrew's taken. But those are the people really, perhaps, and maybe that's something that Bucks could push, is the firefighters covenant. Yeah, which means then you'll have to go to the LGA conference and tell them about that.
I think if that,
we can also
that might be.
put our hands up.
I mean, because you're on the fire chiefs council, isn't it? You might want to raise the idea of the firefighters covenant at the fire chiefs council.
Yeah. I can do that actually, in terms of, I know the NFCC have been pushing the government nationally to say, can we get some proper campaigns, nationally led campaigns about on-call firefighters? We do see them with the armed forces. Is there any, and reservists, can we see some national campaigns? And they continue to do that. We haven't been successful so far, but I'll certainly raise the issue about the firefighters covenant. I'll raise it in the next NFCC call, which we have every week.
I think the Armed Forces Covenant came out of a few local authorities doing it themselves.
Yeah.
And there was like a model there that others can follow, and it might be something we want to set up to say, here's a little badge that you get on your letterhead if you sign up for
That's
them.
right, you can hang this in your Hall of Fame.
And then it's something to take nationally, isn't it? And it would be an example of good practice.
Gosh, I thought that would work.
I can see the speech for you now, Jamie.
That's all
I'm
right.
humbled to be here today.
That's just going to take 2 hours of your time.
But the last question is, what's the full establishment, and how far away from full establishment is that back to the? We don't quite know what we want the full establishment to do.
The difficulty we had when we had not quite twice as many people, but a lot more people, the availability was about the same because they just weren't in the right place at the right time. Because it's about, the key is, you need a driver, you need an incident commander, and you need some firefighters. To get all of those within 5 minutes, all at the same time in one area, that's the trick. And that's what, Jamie's really been focusing on with the Keynes station piece, is that, even with an additional 50 people, we might not see the availability increase at all because they're not at the right place at the right time, or they're all available together because some will be on nights, some will be on days. So there's so many permutations. So you know, the number could be quite small, but you get a lot out of that smaller number if it's managed slightly differently and the proposition's different, which is what we've been working on. Sorry, Jamie, I'll answer your question there.
No, I couldn't have said it any better.
Boss.
Go on.
There's no more pressure there, is there?
Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen. Very interesting.
Thanks.
Yes, certainly, food for thought. And perhaps we can get this information on SEMLEP, TVLEP and BBF, that's business first. I think they're all part of economic development in various places. So if I can find some information, I'll send it through to Katie and Katie can pass it
Thank you.
to me.
Appreciate that.
Very interesting. Thank you. We have no exempt minutes because we agreed them before. And we haven't got to therefore be excluded, or we haven't got to exclude the public. And the date of the next meeting is Wednesday, the 13th of July at 10 a.m. And thank you very much indeed for attending. I do hope that you will still be with us then.
Well, I'll do my best, but if not, it's been a pleasure, everybody.
I say the same. I don't know whether I shall still be here because we have to go through the same. Well, we're not through elections, but
Well, I have two stages. I've got elections and I've got to appease my group leader.
yes.
So, who knows?
Thank you very much indeed, everybody. Thank you for your input. Very interesting.